Now we're going to go through the bones in the body, and we're going to do that in sections, probably. So expect this to be at least 3 sections, just because it's going to be the easiest way for me to actually put it all together. So the bones of the body. Let's start with the hyoid bone. The hyoid bone is the only disarticulated bone in the body. If you look here, okay, you can actually see the hyoid bone. This actually covers the top of your trachea and keeps your airway open. So it's the only disarticulated bone. In other words, it doesn't touch another bone. Anybody who says that there are others is lying, because every other bone touches at least one other bone. But this one doesn't. It actually free floats. This is also the bone that if you ever watch crime dramas, when they talk about somebody being strangled, this is the bone that actually breaks. This is the bone they talk about. So this is the hyoid bone, okay? And it provides you with stability in your trachea, basically keeping it open even though there are pressure changes when you go and you breathe really quickly and you suck in and you end up creating kind of a vacuum. This makes sure that that tube doesn't collapse because it's strong enough to keep it open. So let's look at the parts and pieces of this. So again, hyoid bone. You have the lesser horn and the greater horn. Lesser horn from the side, greater horn. And then you've got the body, okay? The body. So lesser horn, greater horn, and then the body, okay? So that's the hyoid bone. Again, only disarticulated bone in your entire body. So next we're going to talk about the vertebra, okay? So your spinal column, okay? We actually have 3 main types of vertebra. Then we've got the sacrum and the coccyx at the end, but they're all fused together down there. The individual vertebra are the cervical vertebra, which we have 1 through 7, the thoracic vertebra, which we have 1 through 12, the lumbar, which we have 1 through 5. Then we've got that sacrum and the coccyx at the end, or the coccygeal vertebra. So the first 2 vertebrae are pretty unique. They're pretty special because they give us the ability to do this and this with our head and this, okay? So they are built very differently. They don't look like any of the other vertebrae that we have. So let's start there. C1, the first cervical vertebra, is called Atlas. Atlas in Greek mythology was the dude, where are you? That way, who held the world on his shoulders, okay? So this is Atlas. Now, why do we say that? Remember those occipital condyles that we talked about earlier? I need to get better magnets, right? Atlas holds up the world. He's the first, that was terrible. I try it this way. He's the first vertebra, and this is the one that allows you to do the and the, because of how these articulate with these occipital condyles, okay? So let's look at the parts and pieces of Atlas, all right? So you've got the posterior arch, the anterior arch, and you can tell the difference based on how far away they are from here, okay? So remember the little place where the occipital condyles are? If you look, this is a huge arch compared to this one, right? So this is anterior, this is posterior. These little flat surfaces, remember I told you that the facet is going to be where, well, I don't know, maybe I didn't tell you that. Facet is going to be where something connects with something else. This is the superior articular facet. This is the part that articulates with the occipital condyle, okay? So this is the part that connects with the occipital condyle. Something else with any cervical vertebra that is very unique that the other vertebra don't have. Thoracic doesn't have it, lumbar doesn't have it. They've got these little holes here, these transverse foramen. These are the holes that blood vessels use to get up to your brain, or the other blood vessels use to get away from your brain, or the nerves use to travel up and down from your brain. So these are only in your neck, and your cervical make your neck. So they are the ones that have these holes. Again, cervical is the only one that has it. So if you see any type of vertebra on your practical and you notice holes on the side, automatically your brain should say that's a cervical vertebra. Whether it's atlas or axis or just a plain cervical vertebra, that should be a big hint that it's one of the ones at the top. So we've got the vertebral foramen. This is where that spinal cord is going to go through. Let's see. And you've got the transverse process. So the side process, right? Because it means across. So you've got one over here and one over here. They're going across. Now, back here you have what they call the facet for the dens. And I'll explain what that is in just a minute. Looking at it from the side, okay? So again, here's the big arch. So that's posterior, right? So here's posterior. So big arch, I'm doing that. I'm turning it this way. So here's the posterior arch. Here's the anterior arch. Here's that superior articular facet. It's this. There's the anterior, there's the posterior. And then that transverse process. These are just looking at it from the sides, okay? So most likely, if I put this on the practical, I will give you two pictures, one like this and one like this, where I point out the same structures, okay? Now, C1 is atlas, right? C1 is that guy. C2, the second cervical vertebra, again, very unique, doesn't look like anybody else, is axis. So, you know, when they talk about the earth rotates on its axis, it's that big stick that's dead center in the middle. If you look at axis, see the stick right here? Okay. Nobody else has that, just him. So if I go back, remember, where is it? The facet for the dens. This is the dens. So when we put this together, sorry, I had to get it the right way. This sits like this. So this is where the dens, this stick, actually sits. This is what allows you to pivot your head side to side. Okay? So let me put that down. You've got the dens. The superior articular facet. Remember, facets are where they meet up with somebody else. That's where they're meeting up, right there. Okay? The body is this solid chunk right here in the back. So where the dens actually is, that's the body. Remember I said those transverse foramen are only in cervical vertebra. If you look at it, this is from the bottom. See the holes? See the holes? And they're on the sides. They're out here. The spinous process. So see this guy right here that sticks out? If you've ever seen somebody who's relatively skinny and they bend over and you see that at the side, at the back, this is these things. They stick out, especially in skinny people. Not me, because I'm not skinny, but they do in skinny people. That's the spinous process that you're seeing. Now, something else with the cervical vertebra, the spinous process is what we call bifid. Do you see how it's split in two? The other vertebrae don't have that either. So if you see a bifid spinous process, if you see a spinous process that has kind of a V shape to it, you know that it's a cervical vertebra. If you see the dens, you know it's axis. If you see this big, huge thing with no spinous process, this is going to, and the transverse foramen, you're going to know that this is atlas, because atlas is the only one that doesn't have a spinous process. And the reason is because your skull rotates with this. If this had a sticky outy part, it would basically ram into your skull, which wouldn't be a good thing. Okay, so those are the parts of axis. So this is C1, atlas, C2, axis. Okay, so let's look at them together. So remember, there's that place where den sits, but I've got this ligament here that actually helps to hold that in place so that it pivots so that I can do this with my head. We have the transverse ligament. Remember, trans means across. So it's going across here to kind of hold this guy in place. You've got atlas holding the world, your skull. You got axis, which allows us to pivot. The posterior arch of atlas. And then you've got the spinous process, the bifid spinous process of axis. Say axis, atlas, axis, atlas. It's hard to do. Okay, so those are the first two cervical vertebrae. They're C1 and C2. Okay? Looking at any other cervical vertebra, they look like this. Okay? Notice the bifid spinous process. Notice the bifid spinous process. Okay? And again, transverse foramen. Nobody else has those. So I know for sure with this information and this information, this is a cervical vertebra. 100% positive of it. So when you look at this, the body is the solid part in the back. This hole that you can see is going to be where the spinal cord goes. So you've got the vertebral foramen, the vertebral hole, okay? The transverse foramen, the holes on the side, the transverse processes. Again, these are across and they're processes that stick out. The superior articular facet is where it connects to the next vertebra. Let's see. Okay, the lamina and the pedicle. Okay, so if you look, see these kind of ear looking things here? They're sticking up. You've got that piece between the body and where the ears are. And then you've got this piece up here that is continuous. Yes? Okay. So that continuous piece next to my spinous process is the lamina. The piece behind the ears here, okay, is going to be the pedicle. Okay? And this is just, again, that view from the side. So you've got your body, your spinous process, that's bifid, your spinous process. The transverse foramen, the transverse process from the side, that's the transverse process, okay? Let's see. Pedicle, because there's the ear, there's the body, there's that. The lamina, Between the spinous process and the ear, the lamina, okay? So we said the superior articular facet, the inferior articular facet. So superior articular facet is this flat part right here. Inferior articular facet is this flat part right here. Okay? You can see it right there and right here. Where are you? Right here. Okay? It's right next to my transverse foramen, right here. And the inferior articular process, that's this solid part that's making this flat part. Okay? All right. So, cervical vertebra. How do I know? The holes on the sides, the biped spinous process. Dead giveaways. All right. So, the thoracic vertebra. Thoracic vertebra. Do you see a giraffe? The nose, the ears, the horns. When I think of thoracic vertebra, I always think of giraffes, and I think of giraffes because they kind of match up. Okay? Most of the parts and pieces on these vertebrae are exactly the same. The body is still this solid part. The vertebral foramen is still this hole where you've got the spinal cord going through. Notice that there are no transverse foramen on this. Remember I said the only one that has that is the cervical, okay? So, superior view. See how the nose faces down? This is superior, okay? So in the superior view, you have the superior articular facet. By the way, the thoracic, before I forget, so cervical are all up here in the neck. Thoracic are here where the ribs are, okay? So you have places for these ribs to actually attach to the vertebra, the spinal column. Okay. So we've got the body. Sorry, hair's in my mouth. Remember I told you that you've got that superior articular facet, but there's that little piece of bone that connects the body to it? Yes? That is still the pedicle. That has not changed. And then this that basically is our rainbow that connects the spinous process is still the lamina. So here's my spinous process, right? Here's the lamina, this rainbow of bone right here. Okay? These, the ears, they are still transverse processes. They're still on the opposite sides. It hasn't changed. Let me see. Superior articular facet. So these are going to be the horns of the giraffe. See the flat part right here? This is going to basically touch the next vertebra. This is where we connect them. And then, let's see, the facet for the rib. So the ears, on the back of the ears, see that little smooth part right there? Little smooth part right here? This is so that the ribs can attach to this. That's what we saw with the skeleton just a second ago. The articular process. So here's the facet where where it attaches to the vertebra above it, but this actual structure itself is going to be the process. Okay? The actual whole structure, not just this one surface. The superior articular facet for the rib head. See that little indention right here? You can kind of see it right there. That little reflective area. That's where that is. The inferior articular facet for the rib head. See that bump right there? That's that. Right there. Let's see. Oh, the intervertebral notch. That's really actually easy to see. See that little arc right here? This is actually where we have nerves come out of our spinal cord so they can go out into the body. This is the little path that they take to get outside. I think that's everything. If I've missed something, let me know and I'll go through it. Or if you feel confident enough, I'm good with that too. All right, so let's talk about the last of the independent vertebra. If you look at red here, okay, red has these vertebrae here. When you compare the sizes, they go from small to medium to large. And the primary reason is because if you think about how this is, all of this weight up here, arms, organs, everything, is being put on these vertebrae. They have to be chunky. They have to be able to bear that weight, okay? So when it comes to looking at the vertebra, these are a lot bigger than our cervical, and they're a lot bigger than our thoracic because they hold so much weight. Now, if you look at it from the side, do you see a moose? Lumbar vertebra look like a moose from the side. Thoracic look like a giraffe. Whoops. So, moose head, moose face. You've got the jowls, you've got the nose, you've got the ears, you've got the horns. Okay? So when you look, again, parts and pieces are pretty much the same. You've got the body, the solid part. You've got the pedicle, that part of the arch that connects to the transverse process. The lamina is the rainbow that connects to the spinous process. You have, excuse me, the superior articular facet. So see this flat surface right here? Here's my nose right here. Okay, so this is the superior view. It's right here. Right here. Right here. Okay? Let's see. The vertebral foramen is the same. It's that hole where your spinal cord goes. Spinous process is the nose of the moose. Okay? The pedicle, like I said, is where those two connect. Let's see. Transverse process, already went through that. The superior articular process. So remember the facet is here. This is the smooth region. This structure, this actual structure here is going to be the process, okay? The inferior articular facet down here, that's the jowls. That's the jowls of our moose, okay? And then, of course, the process is the whole part. That flat piece is going to be the facet, but the actual whole part is going to be the process. And the sacrum. The sacrum, you can't see that. Let me set something up and I'll be back for a second video.